you're going to introduce us to two more great activists who are going to ask a couple questions.
Yeah, I also want to say when Representative Ellison came to Congress, there used to be maybe 5 to 10 people who were in the Progressive Caucus that met regularly. By the time he left, there were over 100 or close to it. So thank you, Keith Ellison. I think you made history. Thank you. John Brakey, one of the most, actually an historical figure, one of the leaders of the election protection movement, is going to ask the question about what do we do regarding recounts, that we see that as a Republican strategy, it's without any legal standing, say we lost the election, no proof of it. He was there, one of the most important folks in Arizona to monitor it. But without further ado, John Brakey.
Thank you, and welcome, Attorney General Keith Ellison. It's a real honor. My name is John Brakey, and I'm the director of AUDIT Elections USA for the last 17 years. We are currently in litigation protecting public records in Arizona and Florida that could easily prove if elections are real or not by utilizing ballot images. I had the honor to meet you twice over the last 5 years, once in the Phoenix at the DNC Winter Meeting 2017, and when you ran for the DNC chair, and several months later in Minneapolis, Minnesota at a Democratic convention in early August, where you were the featured speaker and you were great. Most recently, I've led efforts in Arizona to help ensure that there was a strong progressive election protection presence during the recent presidential recount in Maricopa County, which is the second largest voting district in the US. In that audit, I was Deputy Senate Liaison to former Secretary of State Ken Bennett. We both worked closely together in the same foxhole, fighting the cyber ninjas. Yes, the Republican Party appears to be moving in the direction of having recounts whenever they have lost an election. I went into the Arizona audit with an objective mindset, only to learn after a few weeks that I was dealing with parrot election experts who are the best talkers, but the worst producers. They pretend to know what they're talking about. They keep real experts out of the process because they're afraid of being exposed, then claim that the election was stolen and ask for funds to protect the republic. It's easy for a grifter to raise big money when you have an ex-president claiming that the election was stolen and publicly states that the grifters are correct. I learned that grifters don't hold press conferences, they only do infomercials. For example, the movie they produced, The Deep Rig, in the very beginning was pure propaganda. And all 3 Arizona Senate hearings never facing the public, the media are asking questions. I and many other leaders in the election protection movement fear that this bogus recount, even if there is no real legal standing for a recount, i.e. evidence of fraud or fake ballots, will become the norm of the Republican Party in local state elections and a march to authoritarianism that could concern us all. Clearly, there needs to be federal oversight of these soon-to-be frequent recounts of elections. To my knowledge, there's no plan by the DOJ, the Department of Justice, to intervene in these recounts, since they were not present at the recount in the Arizona recount. Right. As to my question, what do you think of the idea of having the Department of Justice prohibit a new federal policy regarding election recounts, or an executive order by the President Biden making mandatory for there to be federal oversight of federal recounts? Perhaps there could be a letter from AG Merrick Garland requesting serious consideration of these kind of policies, and for the state AG to request a meeting, a Zoom meeting with the AG to set up a AG task force on recounts and voter suppression. Also to discuss the AG strategies to combat voter suppression laws being passed across the nation, more media appearances, etc. How about the establishment of a House of Election Protection Defend Democracy Caucus in order to have the Hill briefing and official hearings and judicial committee regarding voter suppression and recounts? Thank you, sir. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you, John.
I love it all. It's great.
And Keith,
It's
I
fantastic.
tell you, John Brakey with Ray Lutz pretty much was the guy responsible. They were the two who really exposed the cyber ninjas in Arizona. There's no overstating the importance of their work. And nobody knows more about recounts and audits than John Brakey.
Well, John, thank you so much, man. You know, all I want to say is I agree with every single word you said. The question is, what are we going to do to support you? And I think what we need to do is we need to organize lawyers all over, progressive lawyers all over the country. Maybe they need to do some CLEs with you, learn how to do it. I mean, you can't do everything, but you can teach some people who can do it in their own local community based on, I mean, but like, if you would be willing, what if this, John, could you write me a letter basically saying what you basically said? So like, you need, you know, and what I'll do with the letter is I'll try to get a bunch of AGs to sign it and we'll send it to Merrick Garland.
And
You know,
Thank you. I would love to do that and just state that,
yes.
you know, what we do is so important in this
Yes,
group
it
here
is.
that you're meeting with and the
it-
people on this call, because, you know, we are heavily involved in many states now,
Right.
you know, trying to turn this, because we know that transparency is the solution. And I
And-
quickly mentioned ballot images. They are so important. You know,
Yes,
the actual
John-
act of voting is the secret process. Counting is a public. Ballot images are what I'm fighting for, to be released publicly. We are fighting cynicism in this country like never before.
And John, we want to, Keith and John, we want to produce a definitive document on how to correctly do recounts and audits. And as an attorney, a state attorney general, this would be incredibly important if you were involved, because John and Ray and a few others have pioneered the science of recounts and audits. And this is absolutely has to be a federal standard. So thank you. I'm so glad you asked John to write you a letter. And if you can help us pioneer this documentation, it would be a huge breakthrough, believe me. So thank you so much, John.
Country.